Okay, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum and good morning, everyone. Welcome to another series of online webinar organized by Center of Academic Development, CADe. Thank you so much, CADe, for organizing this session. I'm Muhammad Abdul Aziz, lecturer from Faculty of Educational Studies. And today, it is my pleasure to be a moderator for this online webinar on extending frontier beyond academia. Now, first of all, may I briefly introduce to you our guest speaker for today, which is the one and only Associate Professor Dr. Khairuddin Idris, formerly former members of Faculty of Educational Studies, UPM. He graduated from University of Georgia at Athens in 1996 and obtained his PhD in adult education in 1999. His field of expertise is in organizational learning, and he also gives focus on area of workplace learning, the learning organization, and organizational change and development. He is also the former head Cyber Generation Laboratory IPSAS, a former director of business development, University Business Center, and many others. I would say, there's a film called Red, retired but extremely dangerous. But this one is not extremely dangerous, but this is retired but extremely dedicated. All right. I guess all of us are so excited to hear again from you, Associate Professor Dr. Khairuddin. So without further ado, I pass this webinar entitled Extending Frontier Beyond Academia. All right, Prof, over to you.
All right. Thank you for the wonderful introduction, Dr. Payet. It is indeed my pleasure to be here with you this morning. Dr. Dahlia actually invited me, and I, without hesitation, agreed, I suppose, because one, extension is something that I like, and I've been doing it ever since I got into UPM way back in 1986. And I think I've been doing it ever since. I was also in UCTC, formerly EPIC then, and I think we did quite a lot of community engagement then. In fact, I and the Deputy Vice Chancellor at that time, Professor Dato Ragu, developed the rating system for community engagement. So it's been quite a pleasurable and interesting time at UPM. And today, I suppose, I will also talk a little bit about what extension is. It has been at the university for a very long time. Okay? And we'll be discussing. Feel free to interrupt me at any time. This session, although I think I'll be conversing mostly in English, but you may at any time also converse in Bahasa Melayu. But I think those are the only two languages that we'll be using today. I don't understand any other languages. Maybe a bit of Sarawak dialect, and that's about it. All right. Shall we begin? I think we have already about 20 people here. So be comfortable and feel free to interrupt me at any time during our discussion. Let me share my slide for today. All right. So it is a very simple slide. I'm not very good at this new media yet, but I think I'm managing it well enough. Let's see. So first I've got to put it on. All right. All right. Let's begin by, I suppose, everyone, the outline for the webinar today was quite clearly spelled spelled out what extension is all about and community engagement. But to me, I think it's quite simple. It's just efforts at changing knowledge, attitudes, skills, and aspirations among people outside the university. Uh, Primarily, it is to improve their well-being. I think this is how I look at it. And changing knowledge, attitude, skills, and aspirations is basically education, right? Because that's what education does. We increase our knowledge, hopefully. There's a change in knowledge, there's a change in attitude, there's a change in our skills, and also aspirations, our desire to become better, to do something to improve ourselves. I suppose that is what aspirations is all about. And I think with knowledge, attitude, and skills, then we have better we aspire to do better in life. I think that's what it is. Our life is actually sometimes mired with problems. We have challenges. We have things to do. We need to know new things, right? So this is what extension is. And where do we get that? Of course, from the center of knowledge, which to us, the university is at the frontier, right? And as such, this is where we generate knowledge at the universities. And each of
CADe,
us, yes, please.
I'm sorry to interrupt, Ira. Doctor, I think you have the wrong slide shown because all we see is a blank slide. I'm not sure if you're looking
Next
at
slide. I
Yeah.
see. Oh, yeah?
Well, not really a blank slide, but it says text title. I don't know if is that the correct slide?
Can you see the one that says efforts at changing knowledge?
No, Dr. Kiden. Yeah. Uh-huh.
Uh-oh. Why is it there?
Doktor, stop sharing dulu.
Maybe Dr. Kiden, try to stop sharing and then
because I can see it from my screen, or you all can't see it, right?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Let me see. Okay. Let's get out of here first.
Kalau nak senang, doktor close semua dokumen yang tak berkenaan dulu, buka slide,
Okay.
share balik.
Okay. I've closed all the documents. Now I'm going to share screen. Okay, I'm going to pick out my slide. Oops. It. You are screen sharing. Can you see anything? No.
We can see the poster.
You can see the poster now, right? Okay. After the poster, can you see this?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So, okay, I'm going to put on slideshow and see whether you can see it. Now, can you see anything?
Yeah.
Yes.
See a poster. Mhm.
You see a poster, right? And now?
Yes. Mhm. Yes, Dr.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay,
good, thank
now you can
you.
see, right?
Yes.
Okay, so we are on them.
Actually, Dr. Kiden, he's trying to get all of your, attention here. So, so
Don't
Dr.
worry,
Kiden,
right.
they're really focused. Good,
Okay.
good.
The thing is that I think the slides are quite bare in that sense, but there are words on it. But as long as you can see the words, I think you're fine.
Power tau, tak ada slide pun boleh cakap kan.
Huh?
Bagus.
Yeah, usually I go through. I did one time during my lecture go through a whole 2-hour lecture just with the title slide. But never mind. So this is what it is. And now I think we can see better. It's about changing knowledge, attitude, skills, and aspirations. And this is what education is about. So when you talk about university extension, it's actually extension education. You are actually educating people. It's a process of teaching and learning. And that process of teaching and learning is all directed towards improving the lives of people by solving their problems, by linking them to resources, and also by helping them along with the process of change. I think this is what education does. And this is what extension is all about. It is education in which we try to extend the knowledge within the universities, right? Outside to the people who need them. And primarily, I think it started off with just adult education. We will look at some examples later on how it began. And of course, one of the beginnings, early beginnings of university extension is traced back to Oxford University, right? Way back in 1845, in fact, 19th century, where members who have influence within the university wanted to extend the benefits of university education. Now, there is, I suppose, advantages to being able to learn, to be able to participate in education at that time. And Oxford University, one of the premier universities that actually offers education at that time. And at that time, I think you all know, people who go to the universities are usually people who are well off, right? They are usually the landed, they are usually the people who have the wealth, and they can afford to attend universities. And this is when those people who were in the university, the professors and so on, thought that, wait, there are still outside, there are a lot of people who may need education but do not have the opportunity to participate. I think it's much more of a social issue in the sense that they are excluded from the university because they would require to pass certain examinations and show and have the credentials to be part of the university. To become a student, you need to have that opportunity to be admitted, to enroll in the university. And to enroll in the university, you have to have certain, of course, one, you have to be able to pay for the fees, right? And of course, you have to have certain, I suppose, academic or scholarly credentials for you to be admitted into the universities. Of course, people out there who do not have the opportunity to be in early education, or at least to have money to go to universities, could not be part of the university education. And as such, this is when members of the universities propose that a policy be set up to allow people so that they can waive off examination requirements. And then I think Oxford at that time had colleges and where people actually stayed in the dormitory. So they call it colleges then, and allow people to actually who were excluded to actually stay in these colleges, right? So this was actually an attempt to allow people outside the university to enjoy education. And I suppose at that time, most of the education then was, of course, in the liberal arts, right? Not much yet in the sciences, but Oxford started it, and later on it was followed by Cambridge, and so on, spread out to Manchester and so on. So these are the efforts of actually to allow people outside the university to be part of the university, right? So, and the notion at that time was actually to bring the university to people, because the idea, if you cannot bring people to the university to be educated, then the question was it possible to bring the university to them? And as such, they actually had programs to allow fellows and tutors to actually go out to the towns to teach. And in fact, the universities, through to funds that are made available to them through donors, they were actually paid, I think if I'm not mistaken, something like £400 a year, so that they can actually go to the towns and teach people whatever they wanted to learn. So in the beginning, it was provided through funds, foundations, to help people, to help tutors to go out and teach people, right? So this was actually the beginning in university. And then at Johns Hopkins, if you are aware, I think most of you are aware, is one of the first research university, right? They had teaching universities, mostly in liberal arts, and then later on came mathematics and the sciences. But Johns Hopkins University was established as one of the first research university, right? And then this is where there's the idea of culture, vocation, and research came into being at the university. And this was where culture, I suppose this is where the liberal arts, the appreciation of the arts, and then vocation where technical subjects were actually taught so that people were able to go into certain employment or were able to do some vocation. So it is much more of an employment and job related skills. Primarily, they focus on technical skills like mechanics, and then engineering, and even agriculture at that time. So this allowed people so that they were able to learn something to make so that they were able to earn a living, right? And then of course there was the idea of research. Research was basically as the frontiers of knowledge, and all this Johns Hopkins wanted to share with people outside, primarily because universities at that time were seen to be part of the state. So it is actually, they had a responsibility to the people of the state. And because it was a public university, it was funded by taxpayers, and as such, they began to think that not only people who were able to learn within the university should benefit from the knowledge in the university, but people who are also outside the university should also have access to education. And so it is a matter of carrying out knowledge to the people. And that was the idea, so that people had the opportunity to learn what the university can offer in terms of arts, in terms of technical subjects, and also in new findings as a result of research. The University of Wisconsin, I suppose, also well known for the Wisconsin idea. The boundaries of the universities are the boundaries of the state. I think that was the notion, that it did not, the university compound, the university area is not just restricted to the fences or to the area of the university, but it spread across the state so that it can reach everyone who is actually a citizen of Wisconsin in this sense, right? And so they had this notion that truth does not belong to the cloister. Cloister at that time, cloister is actually related to theology, the monastery, where it is actually the compound, more like the rauda, right? Where actually monks learn among themselves and actually discuss about knowledge and so on. So does not belong to the cloister, but more to the shop and homes and the streets and the fields. So this is particularly about going to the people, right? And they see that there is no separation between university and people in terms of learning. And as such, they had extension agents that actually went out to the fields and taught people how to plant new varieties of corn, to fertilize, and to improve the soil. So these are part of the activities, also into animal husbandry. So agriculture was actually one of the main focus of extension in the beginning, right? And in fact, it's also in most countries, universities have agriculture as one of their main teaching technology transfer activities, right? So they see the university as a repository, as a place where knowledge is deposited, as a place where knowledge is kept. But the knowledge does not belong to only certain people. So there was this egalitarian approach to learning, that everyone had a right to knowledge and everyone should have the opportunity to learn. But as you can see, the university having that ivory tower I suppose, notion in the beginning, where only people who have certain qualifications and certain abilities were allowed into the universities. And extension changed that mindset so that it allowed people who do not have the necessary qualification and wealth to actually have an opportunity to learn also. And this was what extension is all about, to allow people to learn no matter who they are. As long as they want to learn, they should have the opportunity to learn, right? And of course, there were license, and this is where adult education is all about. People who wanted to learn, not only learn about vocations, but people who want to learn about arts, for example. They had the opportunity to learn music. They had the opportunity to learn about art appreciation if they wanted to. They had the opportunity to learn about books and authors and also theology if they wanted to. And this was the opportunity that universities provide as a result of being part of the people, right? So they was seen as an unlimited service. Of course, also not everyone who had the opportunity to go to the university were not talented. They had talents, and the university saw this as an opportunity also to develop people outside the university so that they can better become citizens, for example. They can become contributors, they can become productive to the economy. And this is where the notion of extension education, extending knowledge beyond the gates of the university, the fence of the boundaries of the universities, right? And then I suppose, you see, the other thing, if you notice also, is that most extension activities in the US, it began, of course, with the land grant colleges, the land grant universities, where the government, through the Morrill Act, actually provided 40,000 acres to each state so that they can set up a university. And that 40,000 acres were used in many ways so that it can actually provide funds for the development, for the building of a university. And because it was a land grant, that's where land grant university comes from, the term land grant comes from, right? Provided by the state, it's had a responsibility to together make sure that the people of the state also have access to education so that they can improve their livelihood. And this is where extension, the idea of extension is in the US, right? But the idea of extension in the UK and also later on Germany and also in Europe was so that people had the opportunity to learn. People outside the university have opportunity to learn. So this is where it is, right? The books stand open and the gates unbarred. That means there are no restrictions to people who wanted to learn at Harvard. They can actually learn at Harvard. And I suppose you are quite familiar with the programs that Harvard provide for people outside the school, for people who are not students within the university, right? There is, for example, the Harvard Division of Continuing Education that actually provided Harvard Extension School, professional development. I think professional development is something that people in businesses go to Harvard to learn, for example, right? And then it's also the Harvard Summer School that is held during the summer for people to learn for about 6 weeks or so, right? They can learn the programs that are offered through Harvard. And I suppose there are quite a lot of people who claim to be Harvard graduates through these programs, right? So, and also not to forget the learning in retirement. I think this is something that UPM may want to also adopt. I think we have the basic facilities to further set up a continuing education so that UPM in itself can provide the opportunity for people outside the university to further learn and also to be part of the university. Right? And if Harvard can do it, I think UPM also should be able to come up with something equivalent, if not better. Than I think we are also at that stage where we are becoming much more prominent in the international domain. And I think it's about time that we begin to seriously think about something along the lines of Harvard continuing education so that we can actually establish a network, a global network. I think this is what Harvard had in mind when they developed continuing education, not only to allow people to be part of Harvard, to be able to learn at Harvard, but also to establish that network, which is very important, I think, for the universities of the future. And I think we have all the infrastructure. Uh, it doesn't because COVID allowed us to transform ourselves and to change the way that we learn. And I think it's about time that we begin to seriously think about non-traditional ways of learning and providing education to the masses. Well, we've talked a lot about Harvard, we've talked about universities in the Western countries, but overall, actually, Islamic universities have been doing extension much longer, way before uh, Britain, US, and Europe provided education for people outside the university, right? Because in the Islamic tradition, knowledge is seen to be a responsibility, to be part of normal everyday life, right? Muslims cherish knowledge, and hadith support knowledge that we have to learn from birth till death. And in the Quran also we begin with learn, baca, ikra. And I think in the Islamic tradition, knowledge is held to be very important. It is a way of life that we should learn every day. And as such, right, during the Umayyad era, I think there were just what the continuation of what Rasulullah SAW did, but later on the Abbasid era, where they began to form more schools and madrasas where people could participate in learning, right? And also there was the development of the maktabat or libraries, right? Which allowed people to access the books. And these libraries not only develop books, not only develop books, but they also acquired books from elsewhere, right? And if you look at the Abbasid era, in Islam, there was no differentiation between race. The only thing that they upheld were people of religion, were were Muslims who wanted to learn, and they were given the opportunity to learn. And as such, knowledge was also regarded uh, to be something that is to be gained by everyone, no matter where it came from. So they had no distinction about the source of knowledge, and a lot of works from the Greek philosophers were actually brought in and translated into Arabic so that people had access to learning. I think logic was actually being given a premium because that's where thinking is all about. And when thoughts come, I think the Islamic universities focus not only on facts, but more importantly on thinking, the akli, that's what they call, right? So knowledge was seen to be an instrument for developing the universal man. It's the university human being, I suppose, the universal man, in the sense that that person is able to relate himself or herself to the environment so that he or she is better able to deal with whatever is happening in his or her world. So it is much more of not just for technical reasons, not just about facts, but there is always meanings attached to knowledge that has a relationship to the world and also to the spiritual aspect. I think this is where the Islamic universities were able to extend knowledge to the people outside universities. And of course, later on, when all the other universities began, when the Western universities began, especially when Europe began to colonize other areas, then we become much more Eurocentric. I suppose we become much more Western-centric in our thoughts. And as such, forget about the traditions of knowledge sharing, the tradition of learning and teaching and learning from the Islamic perspective. And the Islamic universities were actually the first universities, were the first higher learning institutions to actually provide extension services. Now, going into UPM, I suppose this is where we are. UPM started off with being College Pertanian and then later on University Pertanian in 1971. We are celebrating 50th years, right? When we were actually focused much more on agriculture. And as such, being an agriculture university, we were closely associated with extension services because this is where extension actually had its roots towards the later part of, especially after the World War, where people used technical skills, right? Technical knowledge so that they can improve farming activities. But if you look at it, in fact, way back in 1850 also, there was in the revolution that actually saw an increase in production, right? Because people began to see the world began to see an explosion in knowledge, where people began to have much more technical expertise, technical know-how on how to plant and also how to produce food. And this is where later on it actually was being used by universities to teach people outside the university, especially farmers, so that they can become better producers and as such, they can improve their well-being, right? That was the notion then. And I suppose it is still the notion in the sense that agriculture is always there because people always need to eat, right? Only the technological part have changed, right? Right from the Green Revolution, right now we are going much more into urban farming, for example, right? And into much more green technology. And this is where universities have them. And this is where we need to be able to spread this, to share this with the people who are outside the university, right? We began, I suppose, as College Pertanian, University Pertanian, And as such, we had three main functions, which was teaching, research, and extension. Those were the three mission of University Putra, then University Pertanian Malaysia, and then later on University Putra Malaysia. But as time went by, we began to change, and now I suppose we have all these goals where extension comes under goal number 3 of the university, which is boosting industry and community networking services. And this encompasses everyone at the university because there's always industry and community network that we can engage in so that we can actually work with people outside the university. So goal 3 is where extension is at. And one of the, I suppose, one of the agencies, one of the offices that we have at the university in terms of extension is, of course, the University Community Transformation Center, or UCTC, which was actually which was formerly the Center for Extension, Entrepreneurship and Professional Advancement, EPIC, before it was renamed as the University Community Transformation Center, right? So the UCTC has three main divisions, which are, I think this was when it was started in 2013. It probably has changed now, but I have not been able to update myself on its role and responsibilities for now, right? But then, and I think it still applies, very much applies now, UCTC seeks to have community linkage and extension. And this is where we developed programs. And in fact, funds were available. I think there's a lot that has changed recently, but I think there's still the university transformation funds that are available so that we can actually conduct extension services to the communities and people outside the university, right? Number 2 is the entrepreneurship development. And I think UCTC has been quite successful at developing entrepreneurs out there, primarily in the food industry and also in the agriculture industry. There are successful entrepreneurs out there, and also professional advancement. And I think we conduct quite a number of programs before the pandemic. And people from Bangladesh, I suppose, were one of our main from Bangladesh Civil Service was one of the main participants in our program. So we have all our experts within the universities who can actually teach about economics, who can actually teach about education, who can teach about human development. So this is where professional advancement comes in. And UCTC is one of these centers that the university has that is specifically responsible for extension activities, right? Of course, at each faculty, the faculty would also be able to conduct extension, right? And I think and the Faculty of Education conducts programs, for example, in teaching English. And then we have, for example, adopted schools that we've engaged. And all these are actually part of the university extension programs. And last time, I suppose, UPM also worked with municipalities. For example, our very own Majlis Bandaran Subang Jaya. And I think we work with them both in engineering and also other fields. If you see the lake outside, just outside the gates at the back of UPM, that lake before was actually crowded with wheat. And I think there was a cooperation with MBSJ to actually beautify the lake. And I hope the water is still clean now, because part of it was actually to clean the lake so that the water becomes cleaner. And in fact, one of the indication that the lake was beginning to become cleaner was when we began to see birds coming in, migratory birds coming in to roost at the lakes and also to catch fish. I think that is one good indication that there is a change as an effort of our extension programs, right? So UCTC, and then oops. This is what the UCTC does. Sorry. Upholding the vision of UPM, internationally reputable. I'm shifting around the gallery. All right. So these are the 5 initiatives. One, of course, all faculties and anyone within the faculty, staff of the faculty, can actually approach UCTC, right? They might have available funds that you can actually apply so that you can conduct extension programs. I think there is an emphasis that we all do extension. And one of the biggest challenges in doing extension work is, of course, the funds that we need to actually conduct the programs. And UCTC, last time, and I think they would still have programs that would offer funds for extension programs, right? And also they have also established linkages with the urban and rural areas, and they have people out there. I remember once we actually even went up to the Mulu caves to actually work with the Penans over there. And this was an initiative to actually plant Kacip Fatimah, I think, as an industry so that the Penans can have another industry for them. I think the pandemic actually put a stop to all this. Oops. Sorry. And then also allowing local community members to access university courses. And this is where they actually were able to come to the university to learn and also to engage with experts. We have also expert teaching short-term practical courses. We have people actually teaching integrated pest management, for example, also in the food industry. So these are the experts who actually are engaged to people outside the university, right? And of course, people outside that can rent our fields and also the facilities within the university so that they can use it for advertising and they can use it for their own events that they want. So these are the 5 initiatives of UCTC. This one. I think this is my last slide for today. It's just that when we go out to engage the community or when we go out to engage the public, then there is always a consideration for what impact are we going to achieve, right? And at the basic level of impact is actually the contact, where we go out and actually make contact with people outside the university, whether they are individuals, whether they are communities, or whether they are industries, right? So contact will be the first level of engagement, right? Just simply, I suppose, either we call them or most times they would contact the university to seek for information, to seek for services. And communities out there, we have, for example, the fishing community, we have the patin fish rearers who actually come to UPM and try to find knowledge and of course technical advice on how they can actually improve their industry. And this is where the first initial contact begins most times. People outside the university coming to the university to seek technical support and advice. Most times these people, there's also extension and of course there's also consultancy, but consultancy is of course involves some payment. And farmers out there sometimes could not afford consultancy. So that's why I suppose they say extension is a poor man's consultancy. But most importantly is that we are actually helping people out there so that they can actually improve their lives, right? And I think right now also there are a lot of people out there who need support, counseling activities, for example, is one thing that people always seek. And I think as a result of the pandemic, there are lots of people out there who may need help. And this is where UPM, or maybe we can, UPM working with other agencies out there, can establish the contact and start programs to help people outside the university, right? So contact would be the primary or would be the initial engagement effort. And after the contact, usually there's support and participation. And this is where we have to work with people to gain their trust. We have to communicate so that they know that we are there to help them, or we have something to offer them, right? And it begins with support, that they actually welcome us to the communities, and then they begin to participate in our programs, right? So support and participation would be the second engagement impact level, right? So after they participate in our programs, then we begin to teach and we begin to have educational activities that actually seeks to change the knowledge, attitude, skills, and aspirations. So a third level of impact will be that change in knowledge, attitude, skills, and aspirations. And with the knowledge, attitude, skills, and aspiration changes, then a higher level of impact will be a practice change, that they are actually practicing what they know. They're actually adopting what we have recommended them. And this is actually a change in practice, that they're doing a better way of approaching their problems, right? And that is actually a change in what they do, either in their lives, basically towards improving their well-being. And finally, which is the empowerment level, this is where they begin to disengage because they cannot be dependent on the university forever, right? So at the empowerment level is where they are already independent, they have that new practice so that they are able to go by themselves, right? And this is the empowered level where they don't actually need the experts guidance anymore. They can do it for themselves. So this is actually the engagement impact level of extension programs, beginning with contact and ending with empowerment, where people are actually independent of the expert, independent of the university, where they can actually do it for themselves. All right. And I think that's about it for now. I'd like to open up the floor for discussion if we have any.
Okay, all right. Thank you so much, Dr. Kiden, for this wonderful sharing session. Now we have one question. Yes, Dr. Kiden, we have one question.
You can help to moderate.
Okay.
Dr. Faik.
Can you hear me? Uh, can you hear me?
Yes, baik.
Yes,
We can
okay.
hear you. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, Dr. Gideon, we have one question from uh, Ramiza. In regards to community engagement, if I have a program in mind but have uncertainties, can I approach any staff at UCTC for advice?
Oh yes, definitely. I think you can visit the UCTC at any time and get to know the people over there. Well, they're a nice bunch of people, so you don't have to worry.
All right. Thank you so much, Doctor, for the answer. Anyone, do you have any questions? Dr. Gideon,
Yes.
maybe I need some advice from you actually. Well, you have highlighted the importance of extension education, and I like when you mentioned about there's no restriction in learning, right? But when we talk about current teaching and learning, this online
Mhm.
platform and what and so
Yes.
many other things. Do you think this environment jeopardize our students' learning interests, to do this extension?
There are advantages and I suppose disadvantages to the new way of learning in the sense of a virtual learning environment. Of course, the biggest barrier would be the hardware and also the availability of access to the internet. I think we are very well aware of that, and I hopefully the infrastructure can be improved in the future, and also um, to provide us in the sense that places that actually provide for the hardware so that people can have access to various links. I think this is uh, our next challenge for us to undertake to improve the infrastructure and also the access to education in the virtual environment. Um, the advantage is that, of course, in terms of operations, there's reduced cost for us. We do not have to go out there because in the past, we had to travel quite a bit to reach areas or communities that needed our services. Uh, um, I understand there's a challenge in the rural areas, but in places where people already have the access and also infrastructure to get to communicate with us, I think that works. It is, I suppose, beyond our control in terms of the infrastructure for access to virtual learning. But I think overall, we will get there. We will get there. I know I myself, one because of the unfamiliarity and getting used to the virtual environment, virtual media, I find it quite difficult, and I also don't have that engagement that I would usually have in a face-to-face teaching and learning environment. And I think I really need to get used to that. I cannot communicate with people well when I just see faces on the screens. But that's me, I suppose, from someone from the old school.
Okay, thank you so much, Doctor. Now there's a one audience here request. Maybe you can share with us, some maybe you have any success story in terms of handling extension program.
Extension programs are always very interesting. I think I've participated in quite a few. One would have been the urban farming in Pasir Gudang. I think this is where we went to the flats and got also the cooperation from the Department of Agriculture, who provided the I suppose the kits, the toolkits for people to grow plants and vegetables from a hydroponic perspective, using hydroponic media, and also in a sense that we managed to get people to develop a community garden in the area that they have. I think this is one. And then another one is we actually, this is in a, there's always the hits and miss in terms of extension programs that we develop, primarily due to our, I suppose, own shortfalls, and also, I suppose, the sustainability of programs in that sense. The other program that we had was in Rao, where we actually managed to gather about 10 what we call miskin tegar, people who are impoverished, to actually participate in goat rearing, right? And we actually work with the Department of Veterinary and Animal Health, who provided one, of course, the goats, and also the Rao municipal department, which actually helped us with the program. And we began with 10 people who actually participated in the program, right? And in the end, we were left, all the 10 actually stopped. So it was not sustainable. But the thing was that there was someone who was not originally a participant in the program. He was actually a retired policeman, and he saw us coming and going out of the area and helping people. And soon enough, he got to know about the program. And he took the opportunity when people wanted to quit, because one thing about agriculture and goat rearing, it is a 24/7 venture. You don't have time off. You cannot take time off. So a lot of people just could not, or were not made to be goat rearers, and especially these people somehow they gave up. The thing is that they sold their goods to the retired policeman, and in the end, he became, I suppose, successful at goat rearing. And not only that, because of his contact and work with us, his goat enterprise, his goat breeding, goat rearing became successful. He was able to sell goats and so on, and manage a good income from goat farming. But also the wife was able to benefit in the sense that she began to learn how to make tudung, the headscarves. And soon enough, both of them had their own enterprises as a result of their engagement with UCTC. So there are always the bittersweet stories in extension activities. We had quite a lot of activities. They are still ongoing, especially we are still engaged with fish rearers in Temerloh, and also in the Pekan area, where we provided initial services, and also in terms of not only rearing fish, but we also help them out with downstream activities, especially in developing products out of the fish that they produce. So these are some of the, I suppose, success stories, small as it may seem. that I can recall during my time. But I think way before that also, when we were at the Center for Extension and Continuing Education, right? The Center for Extension and Continuing Education, the building was where FBMK now, Faculty Bahasa Modern and Komunikasi, is now. That was the Center for Extension and Continuing Education. And that center was actually in charge of the university's extension programs. And back then, we also had teaching programs in extension in extension education for our agriculture students, right? In primarily at diploma level. So part of it was actually the extension practical, where we actually went out to the kampungs, and the kampungs were actually in Kuala Langat, in Branang area, in Stol, Labu, and Nilai. And all these areas right now, especially in Kuala Langat, I suppose, have turned into urban areas, but they were kampungs before. And this was where students actually did their extension practical, where they engaged with the community. And I suppose we were quite successful at that, in the sense that we saw a lot of changes in the members of the community. We saw people who actually grew and prospered. There was one farmer who actually started off by growing bananas, and then he ventured into duck breeding. He was quite successful in the sense that he managed to, at that time, build his house from his own savings. At that time, I think in the 80s, he forked up 21,000 ringgit just to build his house, and 21,000 ringgit then was quite a sum of money. And I think he was able to do that because he was successful in his agriculture venture as a result of his engagement with the university, right? So those are, I suppose, we could have some what we could call success stories. They were documented, but I don't know where the documents are now. So those are some of the things that I can recall for now, right?
All right, thank you so much, Doctor. Now, there's also one question from the audience. So, Doctor, how to encourage the young lecturers, or to prepare them in extension in the early of their career?
Well, interesting.
Like me lah, Doctor. I baru join, then you already retired, so tak sempat nak turunkan ilmu.
That shouldn't be an excuse, right? Okay, I'll try to join again if you want to. Anyway, it's something that is not, I suppose, not something that we do naturally, right? We go to the universities, primarily we focus on research. We primarily focus ourselves on teaching, but somehow extension is not something that we are quite used to doing. One is because we may not have the early exposure to extension education. Number two, maybe it is just that we don't have the funds to do that. I think funds are one of the biggest barriers in education, in carrying out extension education programs. It's good. I suppose from my own experience, I was lucky in the sense that I was with people who were actually passionate about doing extension work, right? So that provided an environment that we actually supported and actually cheered each other, so that we actually enjoy going out and meeting people and helping them out. But times have changed, to tell you the truth. Not only the times have changed in terms of that we have become much more urban, but our needs have also changed, right? Uh, and agriculture community is actually very much more easily approachable because they had their own problems, and most of it were related to their agriculture practices, were related to their vocation, and there was always a need to improve their livelihood. Right now, I suppose if you look at the problems out there, the problems are different, right? Uh, some some are easily attended, some are possibly solvable, but overall, I think the challenge is bigger now. Um, in the area of, in your own area, I suppose, education and professional development, uh, it would help if you get the network. I suppose this is where it all begins. That network of people, that network of acquaintances that actually you work out with to understand their problems and to understand their needs, right? So you have your own area of expertise and you develop your own network within that. If you are, for example, in the food industry, then you network with people with the within the food industry. If you are in the field of engineering, then you network within the field of engineering. So begin with forming a network that you work with, right? Usually get someone, begin with someone, person in the industry, and that person can help you to snowball, uh, to get to know other people, to get to know players within that industry. I think that would be the best start for any individual to begin his engagement, his or her engagement work with people outside the university, right? So it depends on what field you are, getting to know the people who are involved in your field and 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 working with them, right? This would be the first approach. And then the second thing is that there's always, it's always good to have uh, peers, friends, colleagues who actually support each other, right? And also to help each other along in their own work. Uh, if you are able to work in teams, then it will be much more enjoyable, right? So form your own team, your own associates who actually have the same interests with you. This would be the second part of it, right? And three, try to get funds. Uh, there are funds available, government grants and so on. But there are also funds outside there from municipalities and so on, agencies who need to work with people and gladly welcome experts from the universities. So this would be another source of fund. Funds, for example, municipalities. There are other agencies who need uh, experts from the universities to work with, in a sense. Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right. Thank you so much, Doctor. Well, another thing, Doctor, I think there are, industries out there also been doing this. For example, in terms of their CSR program, right?
Yes.
So maybe you can, if you have some experience, maybe you can share some tips how we can, engage with them, in doing this program.
Mm. Well, one easy way is that if you have friends out there, right, talk to them. Just it doesn't hurt to ask them, but at least to introduce you to their CSR people over there. I think that's how we work with. Banks, for example, is one good way. And also, don't forget your own students who are already working in those areas, right? Hotels, for example, banks are big CSR, I suppose, CSR players. What else? And also manufacturing industries. If you have students or if you have friends out there, go out, ask them. Even if you have just 1,000 ringgit CSR funds to work with. But of course, the best also, one good way is to be able to join them, right, in their own programs. And there are also NGOs out there. I think this is where we need to participate in the NGO programs. The World Wildlife Fund is good. I work with my friends, I suppose, in developing a tuition center in Penarik, in Bandar Baru Penarik, and simply because we wanted to help the students out there so that they can have a better future. This program started off, for example, with just friends who visited Penarik simply because they wanted to go fishing, right? But then as we go fishing there, we observe that there were extreme poverty among the fishermen. And most school children did not go to school. In the end, they ended up being fishermen. So it was a cycle of poverty, right? Simply because even their parents did not care much for their education. The parents would rather have them go out to sea. So you see children of 12, 13 already going out to sea and not going to school. And we thought this was actually something that was cyclical in nature, and as such, poverty was cyclical. And just as a group of friends, I suppose, we started off contributing our own money in the beginning, right? Just so that we can work with the community. So we approached the top imam in that community and talked to him about having a tuition program. So the imam in the beginning offered his old house, a rickety house, but safe enough to get students to come in during the evening. And we actually pooled our resources so that we can actually engage school teachers to spend time. We paid them allowances, and they actually taught tuition to kids. And we also met with the parents of this. We organized programs, get-togethers, just events, simply to get parents to come in and talk to parents about the possibility and the opportunities that education or better education offers. Right? And we were quite successful, and we found ways to actually fund the program. And one of the ways was actually Perlis had this 50% zakat. So we pay zakat to Perlis, and they would actually give back 50% to I suppose to a body of our own choice in terms of what we wanted to do with the money. So 50% went to the zakat and 50% we used later on to develop this tuition center. And good enough, I suppose, we managed to have small changes among members of the communities. We begin to see better exam results we begin to see better exam results, and we begin to see more students in the end going for higher education. So those are small changes that we manage as a result of this program. So don't forget, friends, start off with that. And then as people begin to see the success of this program, there'll be others who may want to participate, right? So we managed to we managed to also buy in people in the community who have, who have been somewhat successful. He has gone out and been able to become an entrepreneur, and he came back and provided also contributed some funds to the program. So this is, I suppose, some of the ways that we can actually work with. So you may want also to begin with your own efforts at this, right?
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you so much, Doctor.
Mhm.
Now, do we have any more questions from the audience?
Ada, Prof. Very good.
Okay. All right. So, Dr. Gideon, I would say it is so refreshing and inspiring to hear from you today.
Okay.
I think I would like to conclude by remind us about the thought that you tell us today is actually it is the spirit of UPM mission, which is to make a meaningful contribution towards wealth creation, nation buildings, and universal human advance through exploration and dissemination of knowledge. I would say, to conclude, that is what when we hear what you're talking about today.
All
So
right.
I think there's no question. So thank you so much, Kate, for the opportunity, and of course, thank you to Associate Professor Dr. Gideon
Thank you all.
for your time today. All right. Hopefully, you can contribute and inspiring us at UPM. And all right. And
All right.
hopefully you can join us again later in other session.
Hopefully I can join you again and see you somewhere on campus or not. All right. Thank you very much, everyone. Have a pleasant day and good luck with engaging people outside the university.
Thank you. Thank you so
All
much.
right. Bye.
All right.
Thank you. Assalamualaikum.
And all right. And
All right.
hopefully you can join us again later in other session.
Hopefully I can join you again and see you somewhere on campus or not. All right. Thank you very much, everyone. Have a pleasant day and good luck with engaging people outside the university.
Thank you so
All
much.
right. Bye.
All right.
Thank you. Assalamualaikum.
Now. And all right. And
All right.
hopefully you can join us again later in other session.
Hopefully I can join you again and see you somewhere on campus or not. All right. Thank you very much, everyone. Have a pleasant day and good luck with engaging people outside the university. All right.
Take care.
Thank you. Assalamualaikum.
And all right. And hopefully you can join us again